Just like that, the 2025 college baseball season is still ongoing, but for South Carolina, the season is at an end after the Gamecocks lost in the first round of the SEC tournament on Tuesday. And we've made it to the end. Hello there, everyone. Welcome into another edition of GC Live. Happy Thursday. And I'm your host, Jack Veltri, joined as always by my good friend, co-host, former South Carolina right-handed pitcher, 2010 College World Series champion, the man, the myth, the legend, Ethan Carter. Ethan, we made it, man. We made it. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right, man. You know, we finally got some sun shining out here in Virginia. We've had a dreary last about week or so. So it's nice to have some sun shining. But yeah, you know, we knew the season was going to end at some point, but it definitely it was a grind to get to this point, to say the least.
Yeah, and like I said before, season ended on Tuesday out at the SEC tournament in Hoover. I was there covering the game. I was literally in Hoover for, I got there around 3 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday, and then left the next day at like 12 probably. So
jeez,
less than 24 hours, man.
Question for you, because I'm jumping you. We didn't talk about this pre-show, but I want to pull back the curtain a little bit. So for an SEC tournament like this, and we notoriously as a program, even our highs, was not always a long time to stay in Hoover. As a journalist, how does that work for you? Like, do you book like for the week and then you?
So, yeah, to answer your question, so what we did this year, because we kind of knew, like, okay, they're probably not going deep, and if they do, they'll make it to like day 2, and that'll be that. So we booked. My boss books the hotels and stuff, so he booked it for 2 nights, and that was the plan. And then after, I didn't check into the hotel until after the game because I literally went straight to the stadium.
About
an hour and a half or so before first pitch, and then just after the game, I went up to the hotel check-in desk, and I was like, "Look, I'm leaving tomorrow morning, so whatever I got to do to check out, I'll make it work." So yeah, so typically I think last year we probably booked for like the entire week because we were there for 5. I was there for 5 games, so it was a week basically. But I think it got to a point where I had to like extend the trip by like a day at the hotel. So yeah, man, it's but this year is much easier knowing that like, hey, this game's probably not going far. I honestly could have just driven back after the game, to be honest, because like I got done at like a decent hour, but I wouldn't have.
I was going to say the SEC tournament notoriously runs behind schedule. I think the boys, we started early on Tuesday.
Yeah, they were on time, man, because I'm listening on the radio in the car for the first 2 games. And yeah, the second game was like probably like the 6th inning by the time I got there. And the craziest thing is that there was supposed to be bad weather coming to town that night, which eventually it did for a little bit. But they canceled postponed the Mississippi State game against A&M that night. So there were only 3 games played. Carolina was able to get theirs in the full way, but A&M and Mississippi State had to come back and play at 9:30 the next day in Hoover time. So it's the schedule I think is back to being on track now. I think there's 1 second round game today, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's Auburn playing. That game's probably already over, but they should be back on schedule now. So, but
yeah, no, I mean, just, aside from the SEC, I know there's been the weather has really thrown a wrench into a lot of these conference tournaments. I don't know if you saw this morning, the MAC game this morning, I think was, 14 runs had been scored, or no, 16 runs had been scored and only 4 hits, and they were playing through rain. God. So, conference tournaments really bringing out the quality baseball throughout the country this year.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the weather was fine this year. It looks fine, honestly. Like, even the weather that was supposed to be bad the other day, I'm leaving the ballpark and it started downpouring when I left. But then, honestly, like throughout the night, like there wasn't any rain. It was just thunder and lightning. So I get why they decided to postpone the last game. But as we mentioned, South Carolina did get their game in, and it was kind of like every other game they played a lot lately. They lost to Florida 11-3 on Tuesday, ending the season. We'll recap this game real quick. Brandon Stone got the start on the mound and did not really last super long. I mean, it's kind of just been that kind of year for him where he pitched 3 innings, gave up 5 runs, 6 hits, 2 home runs given up, and then you're behind early, and you took a 1-0 lead in this game, mind you. And I think, let me just break it down. The microcosm of this season was the first inning in general. Top of the first, you get the bases loaded, nobody out, 2 singles and a walk to begin the game, and then Jace Woyter grounds into a double play to pretty much end the rally, but like you got a run out of it. So it's like South Carolina should have gotten more out of it, but they hit into a double play. And then the bottom of the first, I don't know if you saw this, dude, but I think it was 2 outs. There's a pop-up hit to Bo Hollins, and the sun is, directly in his face, mind you. And he drops the ball.
Yep.
Come to look back at it, his sunglasses were on his hat. So later on in the game, when there's another pop-up hit right to him, he has his sunglasses on his face. So good on Bo for learning from this mistake there.
Yeah.
Like this is how the season has gone for South Carolina. It's been a real disaster all year. And it's not even like this team was playing terrible at the plate. I mean, yeah, they had some cold stretches, but like they had 11 hits. They only scored 3 runs, but it's just they just could not get the job done consistently. Meanwhile, Florida continues to scratch across runs against this pitching staff, and you end up giving up 11 runs. You used so many different pitchers in this game. Let's count it up. So Stone, Ryder Guarino, Matthew Becker, Zach Russell, Caleb Jones, Cooper Parks, Parker Marlott, Brendan Sweeney. I mean, and we'll get into more of the numbers here in a bit with the pitching in general, but I mean, what else can you say, man? It's just another day at the ballpark where South Carolina just simply got beat by a much more talented and better team.
Yeah. Comedy of errors this year. You go back to the, Bo's sunglasses being on his hat versus his face and, clearly struggling with the sun. And yeah, I mean, it has been the same thing with the team this year, that they just couldn't get the big hit when they needed it. They consistently got base runners on as they've done a lot this year, but couldn't get the big hit when it needed to be had. And I mean, I saw some numbers that you had posted and our friend Alan had posted that covers the team. What are the worst pitching staffs collectively, like numbers wise, ever in program history? And like this goes back to like when the bats were trampolines back in the 90s. And like scoring was at an all-time high. And this team's team ERA, runs given up, run differential was just worse than those. And I mean, some of it goes to the strange choices when it comes to the pitching. You mentioned all the number of pitchers that pitch. Parker Millette not throwing earlier in that game is mystifying to me. He's been your best, for better or worse, he's been your best pitcher numbers-wise this season. And he's the second to last pitcher used in a game that, he could have at least stopped the bleeding, kept him in it longer. It just a season long of bonehead plays, not enough big hits, and mystifying coaching decisions.
Yeah. And the thing with Parker was he got, let's see, I'm trying to remember the situation. He was warming up when it was like a 4-run game. It's going to the bottom of the 8th, and it's just like, why is he just now pitching? I get it that at the time, I think South Carolina was trailing 7-1. So it's like, the game's over. Like, why are you even using him at this point? I guess you want to get him innings, but I mean, and he came into such an awful spot, number one, because Cooper Parks, who has just not pitched at all this year and has struggled consistently, he walked 2 guys. I think Parker came in with like 2, or maybe it was like bases loaded with nobody out, and it's just like you're putting him in such a terrible spot to where his ERA almost jumped up a run in this game. And it's like the guy had like a 3.5 ERA coming into the day, and he's going to finish with the team's best ERA all year, and it ends up at 4.18. So again, it's just, we're going to get into the pitching and the numbers here in a few, just like I said, but I mean, look, the season ends in disappointing fashion. There are a few bright spots, though, I will say. There's always good in all of the bad before we really do get into the bad here. Henry Kazmar finished the year hitting 315. Nathan Hall hit 322. Jace Woida, despite going 0 for 5 on Tuesday, he ended up hitting 300 on the dot. So good on him for that. And Bo Hollins had a great day. Bo Hollins hit 308 this season as a freshman and went 2 for 4. So he was phenomenal this year. KJ Scobie had an RBI double, and so did Jordan Carry-On. So it's not all bad, to be honest. You had some really good seasons from guys in here. Like Henry was borderline 200 hitter at the beginning of SEC play. He'll finish the year hitting well over 300. And that's a guy that, as we'll get into conversations here about what's next for this team, that's a guy you definitely want to keep with another year of eligibility remaining. And it's the same for these other guys. But, I mean, look, you lost Ethan Petrie for the last, I think, 11 of the final 12 games. Not ideal, but there are some good hitters on this team. It's just the season in general just kind of overtook. It outshined anything that these guys did.
Yeah, no, I mean, this, again, Kazmar was somebody, I think, coming out of the Oklahoma or going into the Oklahoma series. We were talking about, should he be the starting shortstop anymore? And for him to just go on the tear he did in conference play I mean, like you said, I mean, that's someone you definitely want back. I think the two freshmen, showed you a lot that those guys are definitely players, in the conference. The offense, I think we all love Ethan and we appreciate Ethan, everything Ethan's done for the program. It wasn't a normal Ethan Petrie season. I mean, even before he missed the last, or 11 of the last 12 games due to injury, it wasn't, the same kind of season we've been interested in. Some of that is pitchers not having to pitch to him. He didn't have Cole Messina hit behind him this year. So I know that always helps. But yeah, I think this offense, this program's just missing a couple, 2, maybe 3 impact bats that can leave the yard with any swing. I think Nathan Hall had a tremendous year, but he's a gap to gap type hitter. I think he ended up finishing with 5 or 6 home runs on the year. But that's not his forte. I think, this lineup had a lot of real good contact hitters. Just, you look at the balls in play, I think they struck out far less this season than they did the previous. So some things happened, but I mean, the lack of power on this team just reared its head at every possible opportunity it could. And a lot of that goes back to how bad the pitching was, from the beginning of conference play to the end. There was no consistency other than inconsistency.
Yeah, most definitely. And again, just a real nightmarish kind of end to the long season. Like, it's finally over, and let's get into some of the numbers just in general real quick. So they finished 28-29 on the year. So obviously losing record under 500 for the second time in 4 seasons. So that goes back to 2022 when the Gamecocks finished under 500. And before that, the last time that happened is 1996. So we're talking about stuff that does not happen for a program that, for a time, one of the best in college baseball. The 6-24 SEC record. If you want to count the 25th loss, go ahead. But in regular season play, the worst conference record in program history, the most losses in a season overall, the most SEC losses in the year, and 1 SEC series win. I mean, that's tied for the least ever. So many problems this year. And the big question is, how do you fix it? Well, here's what head coach Paul Maneri had to say, kind of just in general about the season and looking forward to next year, in about a 2-minute audio clip here.
It was a tough year. I'm not used to these kind of seasons, quite frankly. And, got off to a rough start when we lost what we thought was going to be our Friday night starter before the season began. And Eli Jerzenbeck got hurt in preseason, and then shortly after that, Nolan Naraki, we thought would be our second baseman and hit a bunch of home runs. was really never himself, and now he's had knee surgery. And then you look at Thomas LaCroix, who broke his thumb the second inning of the first game of the year, never really swung the bat the way that he could, and then when he hurt his hip, he was out for the year, and then, of course, the last month, without Petri. So I'm not making excuses. It's just reality. We didn't have the depth to overcome some of those things. I'm an optimist by nature, and I thought, that we would have the, what it took to compete in this league. Obviously we didn't, the way the season went. But it hasn't, I'm disappointed but not discouraged. We're working really hard in recruiting. We've already lined up some really, really good players for next year through the junior college ranks. We have a few guys in the freshman class the previous staff had recruited that we're real excited about. And then we're anxious for the transfer portal to open on June 2nd. And we're obviously going to need a lot of players there. We've recruited already a really outstanding high school class of 2026. So I think the future is bright for our program. And, like I said, I'm disappointed about this year, but I'm not discouraged about the future. We're just going to keep rolling up our sleeves and working hard at it. And hopefully we're going to be a lot better next year.
Again, that is what head coach Paul Mainieri had to say in his final press conference of the year, just talking about the season. Things kind of didn't go according to plan at all. And, he said injuries are not an excuse, but, went ahead and listed all the injuries anyway. But, I don't think injuries were at all the reason why the season went the way it did. Like, yes, you lost Ethan Petri for a little bit. Yes, you lost your potential Friday night guy and Eli Jersenbeck for a bit or for the entire season. And we'll see what happens with him going into next year when he is going to be able to come back and all that. But I think there's so many problems beyond just the fact that there were injuries and bad luck and all that. You just weren't competitive this year. And is that due to a lack of talent or is it due to coaching? What is the deal? But I think to really get this thing started and get the ball rolling is the pitching. And you look at the numbers, you alluded to it earlier. I mean, the worst ERA ever at South Carolina happened this year, 6.41 ERA. I haven't even looked at what the number is for SEC play in general, but gosh, man, that thing's got to be close to 8.5, 9. I mean, any way you slice it, the pitching was absolutely, quite frankly, just terrible this year. And I mentioned it earlier. Parker Marlott led the team in ERA at 4.18. Ashton Crowther was the next best at 4.38. Every other pitcher on staff this season had an ERA between 5.06 and 16.50. So, and we're talking about not just the fact that, like, two of your top relievers have a good ERA, but your starting pitching. I mean, Jake McCoy had a 6.90 ERA. Brandon Stone had a 6.5 ERA. Matthew Becker had a 6.66 ERA. Your closer, Brendan Sweeney, had an 8.53 ERA. I mean,
I'm not going to play.
It's hard to defend it. And look, I am not bashing on players here, so let's just cut that narrative out of the way real quick. This is a much bigger problem than these guys just stink. That's not what it is. There is clearly talent on this team. Heck, go back to Paul Mainieri's press conference from last year in June when he came aboard, and even before the season started, he literally said, there's talent on this team. There is talent on this team, and I don't see why they can't compete going into this year. And on every single level, not just the pitching, but the offense wasn't consistent enough. There were so many problems, but I think, number one, you have to start with the pitching, and it really was a disaster this season.
Yeah, I pulled up the SEC stats since you brought that up. South Carolina's team ERA was second to last in the conference. Missouri was the only one worse. An 8.99 ERA in conference.
Oh, my gosh.
They gave up 72 home runs.
Oh.
Only Missouri gave up more, and then no one else except Georgia had given up 50. So they gave up 20 plus more than every other team in the conference other than Missouri. Opponents hit 318. again, second worst. Them and Missouri were the only two teams that have an ER or a opponent's batting average above 300. They walked 155 in 240, we'll call it 250 innings. Struck out only 225. It was bad, man. Like I mean, truly gross stats to look at. I wish I could like look this up on like Baseball Reference for like the advanced stuff, but like, I mean, this is like gross stuff. But yeah, I mean, it sucks. It sucks to lose your Friday night guy. That hurts. I have a group chat with some former buddies that went to school in South Carolina, and we were all solid about Eli, throwing this year. We'd seen the flashes, before he got hurt before, and that's a gut punch. But I mean, nobody was consistent. And you'd have flashes from certain guys, and you could see why they're pitching at in this conference on this stage, but just nowhere near the consistency. So I don't know if that's a pitching coach issue, if that is a philosophy issue. I'd asked you before the show how many of these guys were the staff's guys. So I don't know whether they hope that a bunch of guys transfer out so they can just bring in an entire new staff. That's a tall ask, even in the transfer portal era, especially since you're not coming from anywhere to bring over, who I think it was JMU's coach who left and just pretty much took his team with them. Maybe I'm thinking about their football team, but you're not getting a coach from another school to bring over players. Like, you are having to build this from the ground up now, and I don't know if that's feasible. So I don't know what the plan forward is, but something has to change, whether it's the players, the coaches' philosophy, the way the coaches communicate what they want to the players, whether it's getting more seasoned catchers in. We didn't talk about it. We talked about the catching situation a little bit earlier this year, but Talmadge hadn't really caught in a couple years full time. You had a freshman, you had a transfer. Having a solid catcher can help build a staff up. And really, I think we saw Cole Messina. We saw back in my years, we had Kyle Enders and Brady Thomas. Like, I would trust those guys behind the plate to lead me through, if a situation got tough. And I don't know if that was, that's obviously something they've got to address in Portland's catching situation. So I just think fundamentally from top to bottom, it was a failure this year. And I don't know, there's so many things that have to be fixed that, like you said, we're not dumping on the players here, but everybody has to hold a piece of this pie. How you want to divvy up that pie is I, the beholder. I'm sure the coaches think it's more players. I'm sure the players think it's more coaches. I'm sure the fans think it's everyone. I mean, based on the fan reactions we've seen on social media, I'm going to say the fans are going to give that a lot of that to the coaches. But everybody's got to hold a piece of this because it was, beating a dead horse. But I mean, again, it was an abject failure this year from top to bottom.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it best, man. I mean, you're a former pitcher yourself. I mean, like when things are going bad like this, like I don't know if I've ever seen things like this before with how rough things were. I can only imagine how bad it was out in Missouri, but I mean, my goodness, if Missouri was not in the SEC, and again, they don't even care about baseball there. They don't invest properly in baseball. So their AD has come out and publicly said that. So it was.
I'm sorry. I got to interrupt you real quick.
You're good.
I missed one stat. Because I knew it was a stat I was looking for. 51 hit by pitches. So
many free passes this year.
206 free passes in 249 plus innings.
That's like
so almost a free pass an inning for an entire season for an entire staff.
It's just so bad. So I think what we can really divvy it up to is obviously control was a complete mess this season. I think the management of the pitching staff is a whole nother issue. I think that is plain as day. Guys' roles are going to change. That is natural during a 56 game, in South Carolina's case, 57 game season. Like, that's normal, right? But it felt like almost every week, not even just the rotation changed, which I think the rotation was actually pretty consistent this year as we kind of got into conference play. Like, Jake McCoy never left the rotation. Dylan Eskew, if he hadn't gotten hurt, he probably sticks around the rotation throughout the entire season. Brandon Stone was shuffled around. Matthew Becker was shuffled around. But, like, the bullpen is really what gets me. And we talked about Parker Marr a lot earlier, not really having a solidified role. Like, he was used in the later innings, but, like, also it was just at random when he was used, really.
Yeah.
The same goes for a lot of these guys. And look, continuing to hear Paul talk about the fact that you do the best with what you can, you work with what you got. These aren't his guys. I get that, sure. But we're talking about, it's not just Paul. We have to talk about Terry Rooney too. It's your job to work with these guys and help them progress. And can we honestly say any of these guys got better throughout the season? Absolutely not. The guy like Brandon Stone was the number one JUCO pitcher in the country coming to South Carolina. And I get JUCO's different from the SEC, but like this is a guy with good stuff. And it's like if he showed it this year. He pitched a complete game against Ole Miss earlier this year. Yep. He's had some good outings this season. So it's not like he is incapable of pitching. But my point is, like, he's just one example. Brendan Sweeney was brought in to be your closer potentially. And he has starting experience too. So it's just like these guys all underperformed this year. And I think it leads into the question, I mean, what do you do for Terry Rooney next year? He's not going anywhere. I'm going to play the clip here in a second of what Paul had to say about that. So he's not going anywhere. But if he's not going anywhere, something's got to change. I mean, it can't just be yes, you're going to bring in new players, right? Like you're going to have new pitchers coming in, whether it's high school, JUCO, transfer, whatever. That's going to happen. And you'll bring back a few guys probably. Doesn't matter who you bring in if you're not going to be developed into a good pitcher, into a great pitcher. And if it's only going to get worse, if this is a more than a 1-year sample size of this happens again next year, it's going to be another rough year. Like your pitching has got to be better going into 2026. So I'll play the clip real quick from what Paul had to say about Terry sticking around next year, and we'll give some thoughts on that.
No, Terry Rooney is here to stay. He's an outstanding coach, great recruiter, great pitching coach. You do the best you can, and we'll get better. We need to. We had some young kids, I think, that showed flashes of being pretty good for us, and we're going to get some kids in recruiting, and we've got a couple of freshmen coming in that I think are going to help us. And Terry Rooney is here to stay. He's not going anywhere. He's an outstanding coach, and he'll prove that as we go forward.
So once again, Terry Rooney not going anywhere. It's the same for the rest of the coaching staff. So again, and Paul Maneri is not going anywhere either. So I know everyone obviously, see the fan reaction stuff. People don't want him here next year, but that is not going to happen. So he's here for another year, and same for the rest of the coaching staff. And look, I think you do have to see, you have to give these guys the benefit of the doubt. I think you do have to see what they can do next year with more of their own players and stuff that they are recruiting. Again, like Paul has said, a lot of these guys are you're working the portal, but you're also keeping the guys that the previous staff had already committed to and stuff. So I get that. In 2026, as he mentioned, is a good recruiting class they're bringing in. So that'll kind of be like the real test of like where things are really at. But is he even going to be here by then if they have another awful season? I mean, that's just a big question. So getting back to the coaching staff here with Terry and the job that they did this year. I mean, again, big criticism, I think, was the mound visits and the timing of them. Because it always just felt like they came at a really bad time in the game where it's like completely random. It could be like a 1-1 count. guy just struck out 2 batters or whatever, and then mound visit and boom, home run given up. I mean, it's just I don't understand it. I mean, did you ever have anything like that when you were in college? Like, who was your pitching coach back then? Jerry Myers?
So Mark Calvi recruited me. Well, technically Monty Lee recruited me, but Coach Calvi was my pitching coach. And then Coach left for South Alabama. And then my, 1.5 years I was there in 11 and 12 was Coach Myers.
Okay.
Or Coach Meyer. So and 2 totally different styles there as well. Yeah, I'm trying to think back. I didn't have a great JUCO experience. My pitching coach in JUCO was very good. Our head coach was kind of a bonehead. So we had some mystifying decisions in those games. But yeah, I was extremely fortunate. I got to play for 2 guys who had extreme success as pitching coaches and had extreme success as head coaches, as well. And Coach Calvi's still doing it. So I was very fortunate in that regard. That, I think on top of just the poor structure of the mound visits, it just seemed to be a lack of a plan all season. We talked about going into the LSU series that Austin started that game, right? The game 1.
I'm trying to think. Crowther started.
Ashton. Sorry, Ashton.
You're good. He started.
Ashton started, and Brandon was supposed to come in after. And we had said, those are your 2 guys that you're planning on throwing in game 1. You got to have them rested. They both threw 70+ pitches. And that, there's just such a lot. And then Ashton wasn't even active for the conference tournament, which I don't think
So I listened to what Paul broke it down on the pregame show with Derek Scott the other day before the game. He talked about that Crowther had woken up the day after that LSU start with his arm was sore. And again, that's the most pitches he's thrown this year. And you're asking a guy to start at random this season. I mean, very last minute. And so he woke up with his arm sore, and they just didn't want to chance it. So they left him off the roster for the tournament. So again, it didn't really matter, but you could have you probably needed him out there.
Yeah, and that again, that's just the lack of a plan. I just, you have them capped at 6. I mean, again, it's too late in the season. You're not going to stretch them out. The Michael Roth start in Omaha is so special because it's so crazy. That stuff doesn't happen. That's why it was so special watching Roth do it. So the idea that you're just we're going to keep stretching them out, that's I you have to use bad word. It doesn't make sense. So when it goes just to the larger point, the lack of a plan all season. It just seems like they didn't know the staff they had, and they didn't know how they wanted to use it. And I haven't been a part of a coach taking over a new team. Coach Tanner had been there for years. The junior college, UNC, my junior college I went to, and the Division II school I went to, they were coaches that had been there for a couple of years. So I've come on to new teams, but I've never been a part of a transition in a coaching staff. So I don't know how hard that is, but they either didn't do enough homework in the fall, in the spring, to find out what they had, or they completely evaluated the talent, or not the talent, because again, these guys are talented. The stuff was there. They misevaluated the roles or what they wanted them to do, and it's like they coach with one arm behind their back all year. And I can't, and I get more passionate about the pitching because I've been in bullpens, I've been a part of staffs, I've seen this stuff, and it struggled for comprehension what the plan was on all these things. And I understand things changed. 2010, we went through 3 different iterations of how we closed games until Matt Price was officially our closer to end the season. We went John Taylor, we went Matt Price, we then went to committee after Matt had a couple shaky outings, and then we went back to Matt once he got it straightened out, and then so like these things happen throughout a season, but there was no, but and everyone kind of stayed in a role. There was nothing that even resembled a plan this year. And I think that's got to be the first priority in the fall. Evaluate what you have and make a plan for the spring. Like you can't just get into these games and start shooting from the hip. These teams are too good, and guys, whether, I'm sure fans don't like to hear this, but whether you like it or not, guys perform better as a pitcher when you're in a routine and you kind of know what you're expecting. That's not always the case. And, the great ones rise to that call. But, these are 18, 19, 18 to 22, 23-year-old kids that like, they're going to perform better when they know what to expect. And I just, long rant, I'm sorry, but like, that's the frustrating part, like as a pitcher, is that you just want a plan in place, and just seemed that there was not one, or if there was, the injury to Eli just completely shattered whatever they had. And that's, you've got to overcome that as a staff, or as a coaching staff. Like that just something has to be better somewhere in the process.
Yeah. And look, losing your potential Friday night guy is a big blow, but like,
it's tough.
Who's to say he would have stuck around in that role all year? Who's to say he would have struggled? I mean, we don't know these things because Eli never pitched this year. But, I mean, and one injury should not derail what you had planned. Like, yes, obviously it's a big blow when you expect him to be your Friday night guy. But, I think it goes back to the point of, like, a lot of these guys were not recruited by Paul Mainieri and Terry Ryan. I get that. So I do get that. However, it just does feel like, and I think Paul has spoken about it before, that he's kind of, like, when he first came in, he didn't know these guys. So he kind of got like, word of mouth, like talking to people like, okay, how's this guy throwing? How's this guy? All that. But you also had an entire fall to figure things out. And I think this year, what we're going to see going to next season here into the fall and whatnot, we're probably going to see, I think they gotta, as much as I think there are some good arms on this staff that could be retained, and like a guy like Brandon Stone, I think should be brought back. I think he's so much better than that ERA tells us. I think Brendan Sweeney is far better. I think Zach Russell had some good outings this year. There are some, Jake McCoy should be so much better than a 6.90 ERA. Like that should not be the case for a guy with that stuff. And look, some of it has to do with the fact that there were a lot of walks and hit by pitches and stuff. That does not help. So the lack of, to go to this question here, I think the hit by pitches kind of did come down to a lack of control, but also sometimes pitches just run in a little bit when you think you're throwing a pitch like a cutter or whatever, or a changeup. It just accidentally hits. I don't think it's not for the frustration of, like we just stink this year. I don't think that's the case. My point is, to kind of sum things up here, I think you got to know, you probably got to know, like, okay, who can we develop and who can be brought back next year? Because there are a lot of pitchers on the staff that have the potential to come back next year with eligibility and whatnot. But I think what we are going to see is an overhaul of this pitching staff to where it's like you are bringing in let's see, you got 4 guys coming in out of high school next year, 2 righties, 2 lefties. And then in JUCO, you're going to have a few pitchers brought in. So that right there is going to help. And then you go into the portal and you hopefully get into guys that you want that throw hard and whatnot. But I think you got to be able to develop these guys. Again, it's not going to matter if you can have the best talent in the world, but if they're not developing and you don't have a plan, that's a big issue. I think you are right about the whole not having a plan thing. It did feel like that at times this year. And it's just, I don't know if there was I also wonder if there was a level of trust. I don't think there was. In that, it's just
that thing. I think that's clear that they didn't know who to trust.
You would just see, like, I go back to Matthew Becker, for instance, because he's a guy that's seen his role change all the time throughout his career. So he's probably used to it at this point. probably doesn't like it, but it is what it is, right? You kind of just roll with the punches. But he started the year on the mound, looked great. Like his first 2 starts, and he pitched tremendous in the fall and the preseason. So all good there. His first few starts go according to plan. That Clemson start and the Morehead State start kind of took him out of the rotation there to where it's like he never found a solidified role again. It's like he's pitching out of relief. He's spot starting. I mean, the guy obviously got hit around this year. I mean, a 6.5 ERA is tough to defend. But what I'm saying is, like, he has good stuff. And I just feel like he probably could have worked himself. In some of those games that he pitched in, like the Morehead State and Clemson game, I thought the strike zone was very tight. And that was why there were a lot of walks for both pitchers that started in that game, and Aiden Knock as well. And then you have the Morehead State game where the defense just didn't help him out much. So I don't know what he's supposed to do in that case. It's just he's one of the examples of guys that I feel like had such good stuff coming into the year that never got to really live up to their potential this season.
Yeah, and I mean that is frustrating because like I was a tweener. I worked as a starter in the fall, and then by the time season rolled around, swing guy out of the pen. You can go long, you can go short. You know, I never did get a start at school, or at SC, but like, you know, that is frustrating because like you want to start games generally. Like, you know, I was always I want to start, but like again, our coaches were very clear. Okay, you're not going to. This is it, and it's like okay, I can go with that, and it's not just this like, well, we want you to stay stretched out just in case, but then, you know, make sure you get your bullpens in, you know, Tuesday and Thursday so you're ready. And it's so much back and forth. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. They didn't have, you know, what is it? Meet the parents. You know, there was no circle of trust. There was no one in the circle of trust. And I guess other than Brendan Sweeney, I think that was probably the one guy you could say was in the circle. But you know, because I mean, even like I said, Parker should have been in the circle long ago, and it didn't seem like he ever really was. You know, again, it just we can go all day. I think last thing I'll hit on on this is I think it's even more frustrating because you had a coach who was on staff last year who knew these guys, and I don't know whether Coach Lee input was taken all the time on that. You know, I don't know whether Coach Rooney said he was going to make his own evaluations there or what, but it just didn't seem like they knew what they had. And I can tell you, it gets so frustrating when the person who is your boss, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, keep saying you're the problem and that you're not good enough to do this. I was shocked at how many times that was said. And I'll go back to that JUCO guy. I played for a JUCO coach that was rough. Like the guy was pretty bad. And let me tell you, we had one game left in the year and all the pitchers were supposed to throw except the starters. And there was a call for rain. We had dudes go down and flood the field, pull the Bull Durham. They got a rain out. We were so ready to be done with that season that a couple guys just went and like, we're done. Now, obviously our guys would not do that, but like that's the kind of thing that guys get towards the end of the year. Like this coach does not have my back. I just want this season to end. And it just felt like these guys just didn't have the support they needed. And that, you know, again, yeah, it's not their guys. Well, guess what? It is your guys. You're the coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks. Like it's your guys, you know, they wear that name on the front of their jersey, just like you do. So I think when it comes to that stuff, it's very frustrating as a former player and as a former, you know, pitcher, you know, of this program. That kind of stuff just rubs me the wrong way. And I hope that some conversations are had between veteran leadership that's brought back next year and maybe, you know, administration to this, like some has to change with with voice and approach and message. Something just has to change there.
Absolutely. And again, you mentioned it. Like the other issue that just it's not an on the field thing, but it's just it impacts the minds of these guys, I'm sure, because these players probably hear everything. I mean, they know what's being said out there. It's not fun to have to deal with it, I'm sure, like getting, bogged down about how you're performing and stuff. And then you hear your coach go out here and say that, basically you're not as talented as these other teams out there. And then you get the throwing under the bus throughout the year. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I just heard, and not directly mentioned by name, but like guys being called out. And it's okay to be a little bit tough on these guys, but we're living in a different world where guys can transfer at any minute. I don't want to say the society has gotten soft, but it's like you have to be self-aware that like it does not help.
It doesn't help. And it just like the fans can like there's going to be outside noise all the time. Like, back when I played, it was like the early days of Twitter. Like some people would hop in your mentions, but like you'd have to go to the message boards to find people dunking on you. You'd have to go to Gamecock Central message board or the Big Spur or whatever time. Like you'd have to go to message boards to find people dunking on you. Now guys can just enter your mentions. If you have Instagram, if you have Twitter, if you have TikTok, they just come in your mentions. So the coach needs to be the barrier for that. The coach needs to be the outside shield. And really it's just like, I'll just say this too. Like,
it's just like, and again, the subtle throwing the guys under the bus throughout the year, it's just not good for your culture. Number one, like you're already going through so many struggles. And again, it's one thing if winning takes care of everything, right? Like I'm sure you told me stories before just about, Ray was obviously tough, right? But but it worked. It worked because number one, it's a different time, but also like you guys were winning, right? He wanted you guys to be the best. But like when you are losing as much as you are this year and you're just hearing that stuff, it's not ideal. And then you got the online chatter out there that just does not help at all. And it's just, I'm sure it's frustrating for the players. And honestly, getting into the portal talk here, I mean, I feel like we're going to see a lot of change this offseason, whether it's guys just wanting a new opportunity or the staff being like, we want to go get different players. I'm not sure, but like, there are certain guys that I think you have to be able to try to keep. And to kind of list off a few names that I think are musts. I mean, let's assume that Ethan Veltri and Nathan Hall are going to be going to they're going to be picked in the draft and they'll be gone. So let's assume those guys aren't coming back. The core guys you probably want to keep: Henry Kazmar, Bo Hollins. I think you want to keep Jace Woyda too. I think there's some potential there. KJ Scobie's a must. I mean, beyond that, Gavin Braylon too. I'd like to see him, but I think they also need to go out and get another catcher. I mean, beyond that, Nolan Naraki, what can he do? But he's undergone knee surgery, so how does that affect him? Other than that, I really can't say there's a guy that I would say is probably going to be back hitting wise. Besides those guys and it's no guarantee they're coming back either. I say
of course.
I say those names, but it also does not guarantee they're coming back or not. That can totally change. But those are the guys I would say you want to bring back. Pitching-wise, I think everything's up for debate. I don't think anyone necessarily is probably a lock and safe on this roster to come back. But if I had to look at a few, I mean, again, Jake McCoy, I think he's so much better than those numbers. Brandon Stone, Brendan Sweeney, Zach Russell. Parker Marlott was pretty good this year. Ashton Crowther. Jackson Susie is better than that ERA says. Ryder Garino, same deal. And I feel like, again, these pitchers are much better than the numbers say. It is just throughout the year, there's always an outing or two that their ERA gets destroyed. I mean, Tyler Pitts is a perfect example. He pitched against Auburn, 4 ERA come into the game, 4 on the dot. By the end of the game, when he gives up 10 runs in an inning, he sees his ERA at 7. So it's like numbers can be misleading, but at the same time, these guys are so much better than what the numbers do say. And I think there is potential with this group, and you can bring back some of these guys. But I think we all know it's probably not going to happen, and you're going to have to see a lot of new faces coming in.
Yeah, I agree with the hitters. I think those 4 are must keep. 2 are must keeps. I would really like them to keep the other 2. I think, to Adam's point there, I think Bo and Scobie are must retains. I think Henry Kazmar has made himself a must bring back player. I think those 3, and then I'm with you. I think Jace showed enough things late in the season when he got some more consistent opportunities. Pitching, it's a coin flip. I don't know whether it's just a clash of philosophy, style, or whatever, but I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know. Let's see here. Those 2. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, it's like 10 plus that hit the portal.
Yeah, we had that question earlier in here. And yeah, I mean, I think we see a ton.
Yeah, over under 8. Yeah, I think it's going to be at least 10. I think every offensive player that's not graduating probably, like I said, I mean, I hope those 4 we named don't, but I could see every offensive player hitting the portal. And then the pitching was so not good this year that I could see every pitcher hitting the portal. I mean, it was that rough. I mean, of course, some are going to stay. Just whether it's being in state, whether they hopefully they love the university as much as all of us that are tuned in and talking about it. But it could very easily be 10 plus that are just hitting the portal. I wouldn't even be surprised if, say Ethan doesn't go where he wants in the draft. I could see Ethan hitting the portal. He didn't. Yeah.
He's a Carolina guy, man. Like, I know he's from Florida and stuff, but like, he's so about the team and stuff. Like, there's a reason why he wanted to come back and play another season at Carolina. And then when he got hurt, why he came back for a midweek game. Like, again, Ethan, I think Ethan's gone in terms of being just drafted and stuff, and same with Nate Hall. But
for sure.
I mean, look, despite how rough things have been, I mean, I don't know. We'll see, but I'd be very surprised.
This is uncharted territory. These are uncharted waters for all of us that love our Gamecocks and tune in 56 times throughout the year, or however many games we play. It's 57. So
57 games this year.
This is uncharted waters for us all, and we're all looking for answers. I don't, hopefully, we're not breaking any recruiting rules right now, but we are prospecting our future players. We're doing some prospecting for guys to come in. It's just
like, and I'll close out on this point for myself and then let you finish up here. But like, if you lose the amount of players that like we think could potentially be gone again, we don't know for sure, right? Like, everything is still kind of fresh at this point. The season just ended 2 days ago. Guys are probably having exit meetings here relatively soon after the season's ended. Yep. But what does it say about your program if you lose a lot of your key guys, right? Like, what if you lose? Imagine for a second, just put into perspective. What if you lost Bo Hollins, a guy that is a local kid? He's from Lexington. His dad played at Carolina. His uncle played here. He had a great season, and he just goes somewhere else. What does that say? What does that tell you about the fact of, like, the program the season was a mess, but there's something else going on there. It's like, okay, like, you hear things and all that, but like, I think it would be kind of like, all right, something is really wrong here if a lot of guys leave. And at the same time, if guys stay, maybe it's something about like, hey, like, these guys are bought into the fact of like, hey, they want to help turn this thing around, and maybe things will be better. But again, we just don't know yet because We think there is probably going to be a lot of guys leaving, but we just don't know yet because the portal opens up on June 2nd, and a lot of guys will probably make their intentions clear by then, but it's still something to think about.
Yeah. You're in search of, is this a deeper problem than just a bad season? And I think, again, I think exactly what you said, Bo's probably the barometer for how bad it may seem from the outside looking in. If everything, all the pedigree of Bo and everything with this program, if Bo decides that it's enough, he wants to go for greener pastures, then I think that speaks to a larger issue overall than just a bad season. And I'll end on the story, just when it goes back to, coaching styles and everything. I won't say what series it was, but there was a series we played and we did not play well. It was kind of a team effort. But it was a rough hitting weekend for our guys. And I don't remember the quotes exactly, but Coach Tanner, he always liked to keep it vanilla. That was a big thing he said to us. And the post game comments were pretty vanilla. Just, hey, we need to play better. Some guys, here's some good things these guys did. We'll look to get back after next series or in midweek, whoever we played that midweek. And we got back to the stadium, and he held every hitter in there. And he told pitchers we could leave. I think one pitcher stayed. One pitcher stayed to hang out to listen. But he went to every hitter and told them straight to their face in front of everyone what they needed to do better and what needed to change. But that's something that that never got out that season. Like that was a meeting that happened that I think a couple of my teammates have talked about this before, so I'm not portraying anything, but like that is something that happens behind closed doors, and it's direct. It's not ill-intentioned. It is direct to the point. This is what needs to be done. And we went on and we rattled off a bunch of wins that year, and we did great things. But never once was it, this guy's just got to be better, to anyone outside our room. And I think, obviously different coaches have different styles, and that is just what it is. But I think some accountability from up top would go a long way with guys that have to go out there and play every day. I just think that little bit of accountability goes a long way with the trust that we were just talking about. The coaches may have not trusted some pitchers. Trust works both ways. The players have got to trust the coaches that if I go out there and make a mistake, I'm not only going to get ripped in the clubhouse when we go and have our post-game talk, but then I have the chance to be, maybe not thrown, but nudged in front of the bus as it's going by. So I think that accountability and that trust works both ways. And I think if coach, who am I? I'm a guy that played, 2.5 years of Division I baseball. So I don't have nearly the pedigree that Coach Maneri has, and he's done it for a long time and he's been great. But as a player, as someone on the player side, I hope that coach's way of going about things, is slightly changed next year. Whether that happens or not, who knows? But maybe we go out there and we go 20-0 to start the season, and coach can be how coach has always been. So maybe that's the solution, just win more games. But I just hope that there's a little bit of change that happens as far as the accountability stuff goes.
Yeah, there's gonna need to be change. I mean, whether it's obviously not gonna be staff changes right now, but like players are gonna be a lot different next year. You do just hope they can get back to winning, because look, before things really hit the deck this year and fell apart, everything was pretty good, honestly. Like the summer last year, vibes were good. Like coach, like Paul, good guy to talk. Paul's a good dude to talk to. Like, and I do hate it for him that the season has been really, really bad. Like I have enjoyed getting to talk to him, but like as the year has gone on and interviewing him after games and stuff, you can just tell there's a complete difference in the guy that was positive and jolly as ever at the beginning of his tenure. He looked like a man worn down and just ready to kind of like not give up on the year, but like, I mean, like he just looked defeated, man, at times.
Yeah.
And it's just that's what losing does. But you hope winning can kind of solve everything and that everything takes care of itself. But this season, it was really, really bad, the worst in program history, and that's not going to be going away overnight. You have a busy summer here to really get things under like control and figure out what you want to do, because this year 2 is massive for this staff and for this team, because look, you can flip a roster in a summer here, but can you turn it into a better roster? And can you do something different? Because I think everything needs to be on the table in terms of just in general, everything needs to be reevaluated, whether it's the schedule of the fall, the routine, how you're using technology to your advantage, or if you need to use it more, and how you just go about simply just treating guys too, right? And I think the guys being thrown under the bus publicly and stuff, that needs to stop. And also just a little bit more thought into some of what is being said in terms of like when Paul goes on the radio or whatever, and you hear this outlandish quote, and it's like, why is that being said? You know, like why being said? So I think just the little things matter so much, and it can make a world of difference. But at the end of the day, you got to perform better too. And so everyone has a piece of the pie, a hand in this mess. It's the administration, it's the board, it's the coaching, it's the players. Everyone is accountable for where the season is. It's not just one guy or one player or whatever. But
exactly,
have a lot to figure out moving forward. So the portal is going to open up June 2nd, like I said. It will then close or stay open until July 1st, and then we'll get into the summer, the fall. Guys will report to campus and all that. You'll have summer league going on, so guys will be playing in different summer leagues and all that. So we'll have that on Gamecock Central to keep up with. But it's a long off season ahead, and then you get into the fall, and like you said, man, just hopefully things start getting a little bit better. Real quick before we do wrap it up, let me just talk real quick about our sponsor, because totally forgot to do that earlier. Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. It's the perfect time right now to go out there and buy a home, and maybe you are ready to take that next step, but you don't know where to begin. Well, Clint can help you out. He'll take you through the process step by step along the way and get you on the right track to buying that dream home you've always wanted. He's been in the mortgage industry for more than 20 years now, so you know you're working with an experienced veteran at that point. He's also a lifelong Gamecock fan and a longtime supporter of Gamecock Central and all of our GC Live programs. So if you're interested, give him a call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597, or go to ClintHammond.com for more information. So last thoughts here, because this is our final show just about the season. We'll probably do a few more of these throughout the summer if time permits and all that, kind of just because again, things are going to happen with the portal and all that. And we'll update that as we kind of go along, and then we'll get into fall, and then we'll really get back into doing these lives every week during the season. But final thoughts, man. I know this has been a really rough year for South Carolina, obviously, as we've stated here for over an hour. But I mean, just anything else? I mean, I think we've hit on just about everything.
We have. On a positive, I've had a tremendous fun doing the show with you this year, Jack. I really appreciate you let me, join you on these weekly shows. It's been great, getting really back into Gamecock baseball, and being able to talk about it. Don't talk about it a lot with my friends here in Virginia. So, it's always great to talk about the guys, and not the best season to really dive into it, but Gamecocks through and through, and I've had a blast interacting with all our viewers out there, and I really appreciate being a part of this, and I do look forward to everything to come, and hopefully I'll be back next year.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and looking forward to a hopefully more promising future. Again, it's going to be a busy summer, so we'll have all coverage on GamecockCentral.com as always. You can go ahead and follow us on Twitter, Jack T. Veltri for myself, and then E_Train32 for my guy Ethan here. And it's been fun. Tough season for the guys, but it is what it is. And you move on, and hopefully there are better days ahead. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, following us along throughout the entire season here. We will definitely have more to come in the future. We won't be going live every single week anymore, but we'll have a few lives here and there throughout the summer just to kind of keep everything up to date on what's going on. And then the new school year will be here before you know it, and then it'll be baseball season next February for opening day 2026. So once again, appreciate you guys as always. For Ethan Carter, I'm Jack Veltri, signing off for the final time in the 2025 season. Appreciate you guys as always, and have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
See y'all. Good cock.